Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome to The Money Factor. I'm Richard Naylor, your host. Today's topic is ebooks and ebooks in libraries. My guest is Jo-Ann Benedetti. She's Manager of Information and Outreach Services at Upper Hudson Library System. Jo-Ann, we've been working together a long time. I'm happy to have you on the show.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Well, ebooks is a big topic for libraries.
Yes, it is. We have had ebooks now since 2006.
Which is a lot longer than I would think.
It's 2 years before Amazon ever came out with their Kindle. So libraries have been doing this for a long time.
I was in the parking lot last year when we resurfaced the lot. We didn't have enough staff. There weren't enough parking places. We were trying to just help people find something over on the sides. And a lady pulled up and rolled down her window, and she said, "Why are they doing the parking lot? Because with all these ebooks, you won't need the library." So I thought, but we have ebooks. So I think she heard on talk radio that with ebooks, we don't need libraries anymore.
That's really interesting. First of all, another hat that I wear is moving books from library to library, and we have moved 3.2 million books within Albany and Rensselaer counties last year. So I can assure you that people still are reading paper copies of books. But the way I look at ebooks is when libraries purchase a book, they purchase the hardcover, maybe the large print, maybe a paperback after a while. They might purchase the book on tape. So we have all these different, or books on CD, I guess, and we have all these different.
There.
Yeah, I'm dating myself with the books on tape. But the digital book, the ebook, whether it's an ebook text-based or an e-audiobook, a downloadable audiobook, is just one other format. And so what we're doing is we're expanding our reach to everyone.
That sounds a little more optimistic than some of the gloom and doom that I've heard.
I'm an optimistic person.
Well, to feed into that, and I'm an optimistic person too, but I think that ebooks, and I know you know too, they're having a huge effect on libraries and our planning. But I just happened to read a little blurb from the American Association of Publishers where print books were actually up 2.3% last year, which was kind of shocking.
Yes, the particular statistics that people come out with, you never know who to believe. Amazon says, Kindle books have outsold their paperbacks. The publishing industry is looking at a little broader view, but certainly paper books are not dead. I just find this particular time in libraries, in publishing, with the e-publishing, a very exciting time. I use the analogy of the music industry. When people first started downloading music, it was a real concern, and we're not going to let people download, and there were 13-year-old girls being, arrested and fined millions of dollars.
And I think they're just upholding a huge penalty from a student who downloaded, I forgot what university, I don't think it was Rutgers, that was something else, 30 songs, and the courts upheld that he owes $265,000.
That's right.
I mean, that's more than they would cost.
That's more than they would cost, certainly. But what's happening in the music industry is things are changing. And now we have things like Spotify, and we have all these, iTunes, and the Spotify and other free music download sites. So I think what's going to happen, we're in the ebook infancy, and I think things are going to change, and I think they're going to change rapidly, and I think it's a very exciting time right now.
The Chinese say interesting. As a library, we all get questions, and there's so many people who have gotten ebooks in the last year or two. The Christmas
That's
times
right.
was what we've called the tipping point for ebooks and ebooks in libraries. There are questions, so many questions we get of how to do things. So I guess one question is, how hard is it to use an ebook with the library?
You know, that's not an easy question to answer because it's device specific. The way one downloads with a Kindle is different than with a Nook, is different than with your iPhone. So I can't say it's getting easier all the time.
You can? It is?
I can.
Okay.
It is. It is. Yes, it's getting easier all the time. I personally think that the Sony Reader is one of the easiest. It doesn't have the name recognition as a Nook or a Kindle. I think that's one of the easiest devices to use. The Kindle has its own issues. It actually is very easy unless you're downloading certain books. And that's a whole publishing thing. And I'll, you know, I don't know if we want to talk about that now, but...
We can go into it a little bit, maybe a little later.
But what happens is some publishers have restrictions. And by creating these restrictions, that becomes difficult. But it is becoming easier all the time to download. I have been told that Adobe Digital Editions, which is a software piece that people need to download with some of these ebooks, that the vendor that we use is going to bypass that. So it would be browser-based, so you don't have to download an additional piece of software.
So that means you could go directly to their website and download a book and read it comfortably on your device.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. But we haven't gotten the details of that
Right.
yet. We're just told, oh, it's coming.
But it was like the Kindle, that with the Kindle, we had heard that someday patrons would be able to check out books through their Kindle. And of course, in the beginning, you couldn't. And they said spring or summer, not June or July. And people are asking, well, when? In the next few months, we think.
Yeah, and it turned out to be September of last year. So it's hard to believe it's only been since September, but since September we've been able to download to the Kindle. And so they're assuring us that this year that there will be a browser-based interface so we don't have to deal with this extra piece of software that Adobe that manages our digital rights management. And that's managed through Adobe. And that's where a lot of our questions come is, how do I download Adobe? Where do I find it? And so forth.
Okay. So with a library, it's a little different than buying it yourself, right? How do libraries buy ebooks?
What we do is we have a vendor. And this vendor offers hundreds of thousands of books. And what we do, just like with print books, is librarians, we have 29 libraries in our library system, and each of these libraries orders content, orders books, either ebooks or downloadable audiobooks. And typically, they will order what they know their patron
is looking for.
For example, we may have one library that says, oh, I have so many people who love romances, so I'm going to focus on romances. And somebody else says, oh, I have such and such a clientele, and they're really into the mysteries and the... But generally, it's working out well. Everybody's ordering what their specific user population likes to read, and it all goes into one pool so that a patron from Colonie can order a book and it's invisible to them whether it was ordered by somebody in Albany or Schaghticoke or Troy. They just know that this is the book they want and it's available to them. So it's truly sharing, resource sharing. It's a model for resource sharing.
It's much easier than with the print books, because every day we get stacks of cases of books which come from other libraries. And then, of course, we have to match them up with the patron,
right,
and put them on the shelf and get them ready for people to come in and get them.
Right, but the way this works is if I want a book and it's available, I can immediately check it out and download it to my device. If it is not available, I enter my email address, and when it does become available, I get an email. I can just log in and download it to my device. So you can do everything from home. You don't have to get in the car. You don't have to, it's really quite economical.
So for people who are patient, I guess, just like for the print books, bestsellers and that kind of thing, or popular books, if you're just willing to wait, you just say, yeah, I'd like to get that sometime, and it comes in.
Exactly. And what we have done is we have picked a ratio of 6 to 1 so that we never have more than 6 people waiting for a book. If more than 6 people are waiting, we order an extra copy. The only exception to that rule is if we own more than 20 copies of a particularly popular book, or excuse me, if we already have 20 copies of a particular book, we will not order an additional copy. We figure that's sort of the maximum we'll order.
So really the most popular books that could take a little longer.
Right, exactly. For example, right now, a very popular book is 50 Shades of Grey. We have 20 electronic copies of this book. They are all checked out. We have a total of 170 some odd people waiting for that book. But divide 20 into the
6 or 7
yeah. So
per
if you
copy.
divide 20 into that, there's really no more than 6 or 7 people ahead of you. So we try to keep that down.
And we had some people interested in the paper copy of that because it's controversial. It was pulled in Florida from some of the libraries. And so the local people wanted to know, well, do we have it here? And I looked up, and we have 10 copies in Colonie, and there are 60 copies in other libraries, 360 reserves, which works out almost the same.
Okay, so they're pretty parallel, the print copy and the electronic copy.
Right. For a lot of
That's
things,
great.
we try to even have more copies per reserve in the paper. But when they get that high, it's hard to keep up with them.
Right. So.
Okay, so it's hard depending on the device you have. What's the most popular device you think that people have?
I would say the Kindle. The Kindle has really taken off, and now it used to be we'd see the random literati or Kobo reader, but now it's basically Kindle and Nook. Although what's really and iPad, and now it's Kindle Fire is coming up, which is more of a tablet. It's an e-reader with a tablet component, unlike an iPad, which is a tablet with an e-book component.
Now, all this can get really confusing.
Yes.
When I bought my Sony reader, which I can attest is very easy, you just put in a zip code, and there's Upper Hudson, and put in your library card and look things up and say, I want that. I was shopping, and I was at Best Buy, and there's 7 readers in a row. And you look at them and you're, well, why would this one be better than that one? It's really hard to pick.
It is hard to pick, and what it is, it would be like choosing anything, choosing a car, you know. They all basically have the same functionality. They're all going to allow you to read a book, but they all have different features. And going to a place like Best Buy is a great idea. One thing to consider is some are backlit. So if you read at night, that might be preferable to you than getting, let's say, a basic Kindle or a Sony reader where you'll have to have the light on or get a little book light for you.
And I have with my Sony reader, but it costs $50 extra, which is a third the price of the whole reader. A little case with a light that you just pull it up,
right,
and it comes on when you pull it up. So it's just about as good as a backlight, but of course it's expensive to get that case.
Right.
So the backlight would be helpful.
However, if you get a book with a backlight, you can't read on the beach.
And mine I can read in any light.
So these are the kinds of things. Also, you want to make sure that you can make the text larger or smaller. I believe every e-reader or most of them do that, you
Right.
know. And so you just have to test the functionality. Do you want just a reader? Do you want to be able to check your email? Do you want to be able to check Facebook?
Or do you mostly want to use it for a reader, I guess?
Right, right. So that's the best way to do it, is to go to Best Buy and just try them out.
And I guess if you're already schlepping your iPad on your vacation, then you've got something.
Then you've got something, because you can use the iPad for both e-books and for audiobooks.
Now, with an iPad, can you buy things from different vendors, or is it just from Apple?
Oh, well, you can buy them from different vendors. There is actually, for example, a Kindle app So you could download the Kindle app and you could download from Kindle. So the nice thing about these portable devices like the iPad, when you go to the Upper Hudson Library website and you're looking at books to download, it will only show you the books that will work on the iPad. So you don't have to worry about functionality.
Okay.
And if you have the Kindle app, it recognizes that and it says, oh, you can, you know.
Nice.
Yes, that's a nice feature.
Now, you mentioned the Upper Hudson site. And we talked about the questions we get and the problems. If somebody has a problem, making theirs work, especially the first time, which is when most people have problems,
Right.
What do they do?
The first thing they should do is we have an excellent help system on our site, and if you're so inclined, there's a button on the top that says help, and there are videos you can watch. There's frequently asked questions. But if you're confused, and if perhaps you don't want to go through that, your first stop should always be call your local public library, because somebody should be there to help you. Not always, but somebody should be there to help you. If nobody's at the library that can help you, for example, they're out to lunch, or they're not there.
Or the question might be something that one staff member could answer,
but not another.
But a little bit tricky, and another one might not.
Exactly, exactly. And so in that case, there's a button on the bottom that says support. And you can actually click that button, and then the question comes to Upper Hudson, and we try to answer it as best we can. If it is really unusual, we will contact the vendor and say, this is
what's going on here.
What's going on here? and sometimes it has happened that I have had one case where a book file was actually corrupted.
And
that's
that
only
would
happened
be hard
once
to
since
figure out.
2005.
So anything can go wrong.
So anything can go wrong. And I called our vendor. Our vendor called the publisher. We got a new copy of the book. So,
Wow.
I mean, certainly that's something that can't be handled at the library and can't even be handled at the system level. We went to the vendor, and the vendor said, oh, you're right. That particular file is corrupt.
So you would actually have to have the device in your hand in order to really even see what was going on, probably, in that case.
Right.
Because it's pretty hard over the phone sometimes to help somebody. And it's hard to describe what's wrong. It's almost like you go to the car shop and you say, it's making this noise.
Making a noise.
And you try to make the same noise, and that's not too easy. Kind of a classic thing. How many books do we have now? In ebooks.
In downloadable books, we have about 10,000 books, about 12,000 copies. So what that means is, as we were talking before about 50 Shades of Grey, we happen to have 20 copies of that. So if you count all the copies, we have 12,000. We have now more ebooks than we have audiobooks. And I can't give you the breakdown off the top of my head, but I want to say it's like, I want to say like maybe 7,000 to 4,000, or 7 to 5, something like that.
Right. Because
approximately.
I think what happened in December, and maybe even a little bit the previous holiday season, the books started becoming much more important to people. In the past, and when we started years ago, it was more the audiobooks. People had been carrying around their little iPods and listening to music, and they wanted books as well.
That's true.
So people were downloading a lot of these things to their portable devices, and they didn't even have screens.
Right, and at the time, they had little Palm Pilots, and they were reading books. We had ebooks for them to read on their Palm Pilots. As I said, this is pre-Kindle.
Yeah, that's before the Palm crashed. And
Exactly.
Right.
But what happened was, it was like this with the ebooks and the audiobooks, and then this December, it
Things
did this.
just tilted.
It did tilt. And so now we have more ebook downloads, and we offer more ebooks. We've been, as you know, we've been purchasing like mad, trying to get content for our patrons.
Right. From what I've read, people, the ebook market makes up about 6%, I think, of the publishing business, which puts a little perspective in terms of Amazon's claim that they're selling just as many, because the same publishers, except for the small ones. So with that amount, it's really not what I feared, that it would be 50%.
Right.
We have a couple 100,000 books in this particular library. Let's talk about selection a little bit, because one thing I noticed is I like to read biographies, which is they've been written for a long time, and there's a lot of good biographies that are 10, 15, 20 years old. You don't get a new biography of some of the presidents, for example, every year. You get them once in a while that's reviewed well. So I'll go to the shelf and I'll find maybe, let's say, Jefferson. I'll find 10 biographies of Jefferson. Here's a professor from Harvard, and here's somebody from Princeton, and here's a newspaper reporter who's dedicated his life to Jefferson. And then I go on to ebooks and I find 2 things, and probably not as good.
There are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, the libraries do not have unlimited access to every book that's ever been published. So the first thing we have to look at is the book available electronically? And some of the older books are not.
Not even through Kindle.
Not even through Kindle. They're just not available electronically. That's number one. Number two, if they are available electronically, the question is, are they available electronically to libraries? Because even though there may be a Kindle book available, publishers are limiting what they sell to libraries. I know it makes no sense, but publishers are scared right now, and they think that if libraries purchase a digital copy of a book, that their empire is going to crumble. I'm simplifying, but they're scared right now. So what's happened with the big 6 publishers is every single one of them has placed limitations on the books that libraries can, on the electronic books that libraries can purchase. I'll give you a couple of examples. Macmillan and Simon & Schuster. Any book published by those 2 publishers, we cannot get electronically.
And those are major publishers
for
popular fiction and
exactly.
nonfiction.
Penguin and Hachette, 2 other big publishers, used to allow us to purchase their books. Penguin is one of my favorite publishers because a lot of the books that I read are published by Penguin.
And these are the venerable publishers that have been around for 50, 75 years.
Exactly. They used to let us purchase electronic books from them, and now they're saying no more. Libraries cannot purchase from our publishing group anymore. Random House says, oh yes, you can still buy from us. We would be happy to sell you our electronic books, but instead of paying $25, if a book costs $25 retail, as you know, we buy in bulk, and so we get it for less.
We've gotten 40% off historically.
Exactly, exactly. So that $25 book may cost $15 or whatever. They are now charging 3 times retail.
So like 75.
So 75. So what happens is that Janet Ivanovich that you were getting for $15 to put on the shelf is now costing $75.
Which we have to question whether it's worth it.
Is it worth it? The other publisher is
Harpercollins.
Harpercollins, thank you.
My favorite, unfavorite.
And Harpercollins decided that, yes, we can purchase an ebook, and we can purchase it for retail, for the cost, but after it goes out 26 times, you have to repurchase the book.
It's cost less, though, the next time, I thought, but I haven't seen that yet.
I have not seen that either. So rumor has it, well, they're not going to charge as much. The point is, I could go to our 26 is an arbitrary number. And what we could do is we could go to the shelf and find any number of books that are still on the shelf and people are still taking out, and they've gone out more than 26 times. But that's their rule. So the 26%, what's going to happen is that ebook is going to become inactive, and we have to purchase it again to make it active. So these are the reasons that while you may have 10 biographies on the shelf about one person, we may only have a couple in ebook.
Now, I've always thought that this could be an opportunity, if we can't break through the publisher's barrier here of not selling to us, that there are so many excellent books from small publishers, and I know that we're probably picking up more of those now than we did in the past.
We are.
Rather than get the 27th Danielle Steele, which I've always, no offense to Danielle Steele, but in terms of the quality of the book, it's not necessarily better than something that's not as well known.
Exactly, exactly. And we have a lot of smaller publishers that are happy to sell to libraries. We've got some gems in our collection. I think we've got a robust collection. We've got, I read recently, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I believe we have more ebooks in Upper Hudson, in our two counties, than the entire state of Delaware.
That's pretty good.
So I'm pretty proud of that. We have a good collection, we have a popular collection, and at any one time, about 45% of our books, our ebooks and downloadable audiobooks, are not available. They're out.
And that's unheard of with the print books. If we had that, let's say we have 200,000 titles or items in the library, there would be 100,000 circulation every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
3 weeks. And there would be no way we could get them back on the shelf. We would need a staff about 6 times or 20 times bigger.
Right, and what happens here is when you download a book, you can choose how long you want it for. Do you want it for 1 week? Do you
that's a good question. How long can you keep it?
Yeah, 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. And if you choose, you know, that book may become available in a week or in a couple of days because you don't have to wait for the 4 weeks or whatever. So that's one.
Now, can you bring it back early? I don't know why. I mean, I would always make it 3 weeks, and then if I finished it, I would want to bring it back early.
Yeah.
But if I didn't know that I could bring it back early,
You can. On ebooks, you can return them early. The way you do that is different depending on the device. It's different on a Kindle than on a Nook. But again, you can call your library and they'll be able to tell you how to return a book early. Audiobooks can only be returned early if you download them to a device. So what I mean by that is, if you put it on your PC or your Mac or your laptop and you're listening to your audiobook there, you cannot return it early. But if you take it from there and put it on your iPhone so that you can hear it on your iPhone, then you can return it early. But again, just call your library and yes, that frees it up so you don't have to wait. When it does expire, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to remember that it's expiring. You don't have to call the library. You don't have to...
And we don't have to send overdue notices.
We don't have to send overdue notices. What happens is it just automatically, there's a timer on the file, and on that day, the file expires. And then you can just delete it, or you can look at the cover for the next 5 years. But
well, ebooks are certainly a big topic these days. I go, no matter where you go, you sit and you're waiting for something, and you look down the row, and you're liable to see somebody reading a paper, or somebody writing a magazine, but there's invariably somebody reading their e-reader.
Exactly. And in fact, I was recently on a trip, and the flight attendant said, "Please turn off your e-readers now."
Wow,
So
not your electronic device.
Not your electronic, she says, well, she said electronic devices including e-readers. So that's a specific, you know.
I guess that reflects the fact that there's so many people that are constantly getting into this, that there's always somebody new and they don't know exactly even what they have.
Well, I get a lot of those questions from older people who say, my grandchild gave me this device and I don't know what to do with it and I don't know how to download books. And I generally will tell them how to get started, and then I get the follow-up email. this is great. I can make the print as large as I want. I love this. I'm going to tell all my friends about this. This is the best thing. So I think it's narrowing that digital gap.
And that reminds me why it's hard to tell how many people have e-readers, because if you're not a reader, then you're not even checking out a paper book, and you're not going to the bookstore to buy a book. So when we look at what percentage of the reading population that have e-books, it's a little more difficult because you can't just look at the population.
That's right. And I've seen numbers all over the map, so I wouldn't even hazard a guess.
Uh-huh. Well, this has been interesting. I'm sure that there'll be more to come.
Yes, as I said, it's a very exciting time for libraries. I'm thrilled about this, and I just am so happy that we can offer this to our communities.
It's great. Thank you, Jo-Ann.
Okay, thank you.
And I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show, that you tune in again next time, and that you have a great week. Take care.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.